I welcome all of you on platform of YourPD Education, and you are watching the series of our interaction with the academicians, professors, researchers of India and different universities globally. So in today's my this video, I'm going to interact with Professor Harpreet, who is one of the very prominent, I'll say, academician, researcher, and faculty member of IIT Ropar. He is the person who is instrumental in development, infrastructure development, academic infrastructure development of IIT Ropar since the days this IIT Ropar was, formed. It came into existence. Professor Harpreet has been instrumental in uh, different developments, academic infrastructure development. Now, in today's interaction, this video is not about his contribution in the development of IIT Ropar and how different domains of research or research verticals were created in IIT Ropar. So it is not related to that. It is related to his own research domain. You know, India is uh, a country which has very capable professors, researchers, and academicians. Many of you who aspire to be in the domain of research, academics, should first understand the research work done by these academicians. You should first know what is the research work being done by the professors, very capable faculty members in India, in different universities of India, and then you should pursue your career in that direction. So, I'm going to interact with many such faculty members and ask them about their domain of research and bring it to you so that you can make a very thoughtful decision to pursue research career in this particular direction. So, in my today's interaction, I'm going to interact with the, Professor Harpreet and about his research domains. So his authority in, I will say, surface engineering, high temperature corrosion erosion domains, slurry erosion, biomedical coating, cold spray coating, and swarf particle, on which he has got the patent, and it is commercially viable patent. So let's see and let's understand what work Professor Harpreet is doing, so that many of you who want to work under his guidance or want to pursue the research career in this particular direction can make the decision after listening to him and after seeing what research area he is working. So let's go and listen to what Professor Harpreet is to say about his research area.
Now, Professor Harpreet, I come to my next part of interaction, and that is I will be interacting with you in your capacity as a researcher and as professor in mechanical engineering.
Sure.
I know through your research papers, your publications, sir, you are authority in the domain of surface engineering, high temperature corrosion, biomedical coating, cold spray coatings, swarf particles. So these terms, little bit, I myself from being mechanical background, little bit I know. But I want you to put in a very simple terms all these terms to my viewers who are largely technocrats of different domain. And we also know that this material science is not only ambit of mechanical engineering, but it is an interdisciplinary domain. So I want you to, sir, tell us about this field of yours. So my first interaction point is related to surface engineering. And what do we mean by surface engineering? What are the applications or importance relevant points of this particular domain?
Well, so when you say surface engineering, as the name suggests, so we are engineering the surfaces. See, be it any product, right? So it's the surface which has to interact with the environment. Okay,
Yes.
Environment may be very hostile sometimes. Okay, so surface has a special duty. When I talk about any product, we have the bulk phase which is inside, which is protected, but it is protected by the surface, right? So surface has to face all these consequences, and that is why surfaces have to be protected. And there's a lot of then engineering that how to protect it in different types of environments. For example, this high temperature corrosion, when we say, especially we talk about these boilers where there's temperature of 900 degrees Celsius is possible under overheating conditions. Anyways, 500-600 100 degrees anyway always there, which is not less even And then at the same time, we have some other kind of, hostile environment in the terms of formation of these sodium sulfates then in pentoxides on these oxide layers, which again, degrade these surfaces very fastly. So how to protect them? Because and similarly, you talk about anything. Maybe it's a hydroturbine. Again, hydroturbine, we have a lot of flux of water coming from uphill and impinging on the surface of these blades, right? And these blades are their surfaces are getting eroded, what we call, right? Again, you have to protect them. If you don't protect, you will soon damage your whole turbine, and your plant will be stopped. Be it any application, for example, in biomedical also, again, we have these implants. So implants, typically we have these steels and titanium based alloys. So all of them, when they go into body, so our body is highly corrosive, right? So again, surfaces get damaged, So, and if you don't stop this, you can see a lot of degradation will happen, and it can lead to several complications, including the ultimate failure of the surface or component, right? So that is where the question is how to protect these surfaces under the given environment, and there are various methods and means which comes under the domain of surface engineering. So surface engineering is basically engineering the surface for the given applications so that they can sustain for longer times.
Great, great.
Uh,
So, yeah, Professor Harpreet, I want to ask you, sir, like this domain of surface engineering, what domain of engineering students can aspire to have career in this? I mean, only mechanical engineers or metallurgical engineers, or other branches also?
yeah, actually, there is scope for several people, right? Even surface engineering, for example, if we talk about computer engineers, so computer engineers can help us to simulate the conditions, or model our these materials which can be used for surface engineering, right? Because if you see, typically most of these surface engineering processes are very costly actually, and in many cases we don't have the process time for newer materials, right? And you have to go for a lot of hit and trial kind of things. So there, for example, computer engineers can help us to uh, model these things, maybe different material and substrate combinations and so on. So of course, similarly, other engineering people can also help us, right? Or can use our devices. Even civil engineers, for example, okay, so they are using these iron rods, what we call, so it can we make them more corrosion resistant or so on. So I think there is scope for
All the
all
domains.
kind of people here. For example, electrical engineering. So we have some systems, surface engineering technologies which are basically based on electrical engineering concepts, right? So, and electronics engineering, we have a lot of coatings now, and of course they are at nano level, but all of them are deposited by one or other surface engineering technology. So I think this is a quite interdisciplinary kind of area,
Domain.
right? So
Professor Harpreet, you have also expertise in high temperature corrosion, or what we call erosion corrosion. Though these two terms, English terms, people are aware, but when they are added, what kind of technology domain it becomes erosion corrosion, and what do you mean by high temperature corrosion?
yeah, high temperature corrosion is basically, corrosion. We all know that when a metal is, subjected to some, environment, so we get some corrosion layer on it, oxide layer. And if environment is more like chemical, it develops more different types of, these corrosion layers on it, which slowly get detached and so on. So the very basic fundamental of corrosion is that it is activated by this kinetics is highly dependent on the temperatures. So we have several applications where temperature is very high. So when temperature is high, the process of this corrosion becomes very accelerated, right? So that is what we call high temperature corrosion. And for example, let me illustrate this with the help of this boiler example of boiler. So in boiler, what happens? So we have, for example, we have these water tube boilers. So on fire side, when we see, so we have a temperature of the order of 600 or so degree Celsius temperature. But at the same time, we are burning this fuel. So fuel also have some of the pure, impurities in terms of sodium or potassium and so on. All these, and we have sulfur also, right? So with that thing, what is happening now in a boiler is that as soon as the process starts, we develop uh, an oxide layer on the surface, right? Now what is happening is with this sulfur, sodium, vanadium, all kind of stuff. So we get some salts deposited on these layers, right? For example, sodium sulfate is one, vanadium pentoxide is another one. They also deposit on the surface, right? And it happens so that when the temperature keeps on increasing, these salts further react with the oxide layers of the these tubes, which further accelerate the whole process. We call fluxing of oxide layer happens, and as soon as the flux layer is removed, oxide layer is removed, the metal has to again work to develop more oxide layer and so on. And this leads to depletion of the basic elements of the steel or tube, and which ultimately leads to failure or puncture of these tubes. But this is one aspect. This is if this is only happening, we call it high temperature corrosion. But situation is even much worse in these kind of environments. That comes from these fly ash particles. See, we are burning a fuel, say coal or whatever. Now this whole fly ash is now going up, right? So fly ash has a very hard particles, right? Silica and others. They also simultaneously, come and erode the surfaces. Surface which is already damaged or already under the high temperature corrosion is now also facing this erosion, right? And it has been seen that when this kind of scenario, corrosion accompanied by erosion,
Yeah.
we call erosion corrosion, it is much more than what you can calculate by simply adding them.
Either erosion, yeah.
So they have this synergistic effect, which is much more intensive, and that's what we call erosion corrosion. And this has to be protected.
Yeah. So, Professor Harpreet, you are also expert in slurry erosion of hydraulic turbines. So, is this also example of erosion corrosion? Because that is also high temperature application, if I'm not wrong. If not hydraulic turbines, then at least your gas turbine or something. So, when we talk about slurry erosion of hydraulic turbines, it may not be the problem of high temperature, but is a similar kind of thing as you mentioned about when the gases and gas turbine we talk about, then that may become erosion corrosion kind of problem.
Yeah.
So I want you to first tell us about slurry erosion of hydraulic turbines, and then have you done these kind of same activities in gas turbines?
Well, hydro turbines is basically, we call it slurry erosion, I would say. Corrosion effects are there, but those are minor actually.
Minor, yeah.
Because we have a nice steels which can resist this erosion corrosion under these environments. But erosion, again, for example, if we take an example of our, Naphtha Chakri project or whatever hydro turbine we have installed here in HP. So what is happening there is that we are getting the water, but water is also having some kind of, very hard particles, right? Which are coming through what we call silt. Okay, silt is coming because this is basically we are eroding our hills and some kind of, although we have filtration process there, but
Yes,
still
yes.
some particles are they become entrapped into this water stream. Through penstock, they impact on the surface of these turbine blades, and then they erode the surface. They damage the surface. Erosion is nothing but loss of material, right? When the particles come with high velocity, they take away the material, right? This is what we call slurry erosion, right? Of course, in turbines, another degradation mechanism which is of concern is cavitation, when that we
Cavitation.
also are discussing, right? But corrosion is not that predominant. Okay, so our major work is in hydro turbines.
Okay.
Now, talking about gas turbines, of course, we have a situation there. We have similar situation of high temperature corrosion as well as erosion also, especially when your plane is going through windy or these deserts or so on. There you can suck in some kind of hard particles which strike on the surfaces. That is slightly different problem. because the whole design of those coatings is different than the hydroturbines. But I have not done work in gas turbines. I have done work in hydroturbines mainly.
Okay, great. Professor Harpreet, I was going through your research publications, and there I found one area which is looking like very interesting, that is biomedical coating. So biomedical is a research buzzword, we know that. So
Yeah.
please tell us something about biomedical coating. What is the meaning of that?
Yeah, there again in biomedical coatings, what kind of work we are doing at IIT Ropar is that not IIT Ropar, I mean in my group at IIT Ropar, I would say, because some people are doing biomedical coatings, of course, with some other objectives, of course. But in our group, what we are doing is we are basically doing work on load-bearing implants. You know, load-bearing implants. For example, you are putting some implant in your this leg, or lower leg or upper leg, and so on. So there, what happens is when you put your these implants, which are these stainless steels or titanium based or even cobalt based. So our body environment is again very hostile. Actually, it is again highly corrosive. Okay, although it's a kind of room temperature, it's like 37 degrees Celsius temperatures there. So that corrosion is there because our body fluid is corrosive in nature. One thing. Another thing is wherever we have this relative motion, for example, we are putting this kind of implant in the body. So this. So here again we have a wear problem also, what we call wearing of these surfaces, right?
Yes.
Now all these, whether it is corrosion or wear, they are surface phenomena. Okay, and that is where a lot of people are now trying to develop, some kind of coatings,
Okay.
so that we can assess this corrosion as well as wear problem, right?
Okay.
In the body. And that's exactly where our group is working. That
So
can
it is
be
more
done.
relevant for orthopedic operations, if I'm
Yeah,
not wrong, Professor.
right. Yeah, orthopedic. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, Professor Harpreet, you are also working in cold spray coating domain.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about biomedical coating. So is the cold spray coating a part of biomedical coating or something like that?
Let me put in this way: cold spray is one of the technologies to deposit coatings, right?
Okay.
We have so many. We have chemical vapor deposition, we have physical vapor deposition, we have thermal spraying, and then within thermal spray we have this cold spray actually. So in my career, what we have done, I have mainly focused on thermal spray processes. Thermal processes are favored to me because they are more industrial viable actually. So in thermal spray, typically what we do, we have powder particles which are given some temperature and velocity, and we propel them towards the substrate. We achieve very high velocities. When these particles in heated condition, they deform on the surface and they stick to the surface, and that's what we call coating, right? So cold spray is like advancement in the thermal spray generations itself, because as an engineer or scientist, we never like these temperatures, high temperatures in our processes. So what people have done in thermal spray, they kept on increasing the velocity of the particles, but they kept on decreasing the working temperatures.
Okay.
Cold spray is one kind of extreme where temperature has reduced to minimal, but velocity has been very increased of the particles. That these particles when go with very high velocity, supersonic velocity, they stick on the surface. Now, once we have this cold spray technology, now this can be applied to biomedical applications. This can be applied to boilers. This can be applied to hydro turbines, even gas turbines. Also, some people are developing these bond coats, on the turbine blades. So many applications. Even cold spray, it's like a solid state process, so we get very dense kind of layers, layer by layer you can keep on depositing. So when I say layer by layer, now that gave us an idea that why not additive manufacturing can be done by cold spray, and that's why cold sprays are now seen not as only as a technology for surface engineering, but for additive manufacturing also. What I mean by that, that even cold spray can help us to develop some standalone products also, not only as coating, right? So cold spray in that sense is very versatile. And IIT Ropar has this facility, and I through this channel also invite young scientists, engineers to come, even industry to come and try this technology as an alternate to their traditional techniques. See, people are using those welding and other dangerous techniques to engineer the surfaces. But why not to use this? At least try and then benchmark it with regard to their own technology, and see we can explore so many applications of this technology.
Professor Harpreet, I come to one of the last questions of my interaction point related to your research field, and that is the most interesting one also. You have filed a patent, sir, and you have filed a patent on a technology and process for coating a substrate with swarf particle. That is a title. So, what do we mean by swarf particle, if I'm rightly pronouncing it? Swarf particle, and tell us something about this filed patent.
Okay, so well, this is another outcome of, I would say, observation, careful observation by one of our students, right? See, swarf is nothing but you might have seen the grinding operation or cutting operation, sawing, what we call. If we have a metal rod, we want to cut it with this cutter, right? So we have this saw which can cut it, right? Or if I want to grind it, so I have these grinder, wheels. So what happens? Basically, all these processes are material removal processes, right? Material is removed in the form of very small chips, and these chips or particles which are flying in air probably and then getting waste. This is what is swarf actually. So this swarf, my student thought, why not to use this swarf? Again, we were, nowadays I think it's a trend that we always talk about sustainability, right? So we want to use the waste for some useful things, right? So from there, what he saw when he was grinding one day, so he was grinding in a restricted fashion. So what he saw that these swarf particles are getting stuck on the surface, which was accidentally lying in the path of that swarf stream. So from there he got idea, and we discussed later that why not? This is nothing but it's coming up as a coating on the surface, right? So, and then we tested it for its adhesion and all kind of properties, and we saw very interesting results that yes, this is sticking as a coating. And then we did a lot of trials. So basically, grinding different materials, producing those swarf, and depositing on some target material.
Okay.
In the form of coating.
Okay.
And that is what we then thought, why not to patent it? Because when we searched the kind of this literature, we could not find this thing. And this is a good problem in the sense that we are otherwise this material is getting waste,
yes,
right? Whatever is going flying in air. Of course, there are sometimes some people collect it and put some secondary energy onto it to bring it to some useful form. But here directly in situ we are using this waste for something useful, and that is where we then developed it. Another thing which came very interesting in this, that even we could coat this glass actually, window panes, with this thing, which is very difficult actually. Otherwise, depositing metal particles on glass is a difficult thing, right? So, but this process could do that also. So this all thing. We got very fascinated with, and we applied its patent, and we got US patent also. Now we are looking for its commercialization. So
great. So Professor Harpreet, what I understood is like swarf particle is a particle of very small size. Yeah. That is what you produce through grinding. And I want to ask you, sir, out of my own curiosity, that is the size of swarf particle only parameter or criteria which facilitates its coating behavior, or some another parameter also?
No, there are some other also. For example, we optimize this process, even this standoff distance. For example, my grinding wheel is here, right? So this is standoff distance. This is substrate.
So distance is also one parameter.
Distance is one, right? Your RPM at what we are. These RPM will dictate the velocity of these particles. So in other words, velocity of this particle.
Okay.
And of course, temperature, generation, and so on. So there are process parameters.
Great. So, Professor Harpreet, these were my questions for you, sir. I have exhausted, and I'm really thankful you have given in detail explanation of all the points. But before I say thanks finally to you, I have two more things to ask you, and they are related to see your academician researcher par excellence, and students all over India want to come and work with professors like you. So, sir, if some student wants to come under your guidance for higher education, say master's program or PhD program, so in which domain do you think they should work? And they always come with some mental makeup like we want to get into some industries after our graduation because that is the purpose why they come for. So, what kind of industries they can look forward in later stage? And is there any entrepreneurial opportunity related to your domain of research for such students? That is also one thing I want to ask you. And what do you need in such students? How he should think? Okay, I can work under with Professor Harpreet. So, what do you look for in the students as your
So,
research students?
yeah, I look for passion only. Whenever a student comes to me, it's my record. I never ask their grades. It's my
Okay,
record.
okay,
You can
great.
ask my student. So
Okay,
if I see the passion is there, uh, and I love those students who find me and then write to me email, and I
okay,
make sure that I respond them.
okay.
What I can't help is facilitating his or her admission into IIT system. That
Yes,
is my
obviously,
limitation, and you have to respect that.
obviously.
Otherwise, once the students in IIT, I am
Mm,
all for such students. Even
mm,
if they are not in IIT,
mm.
I am helping some students who are working elsewhere, but they come here for their project work. Right?
Okay. Mm,
We have kept our doors open,
mm.
and the condition to enter my group is that one should be ready to help others. This is our basic rule, and my lab name is the name of my lab is your lab actually.
Okay, that is what
Your
you're
lab. Yeah. So we welcome all kind of students, and then we try to help them out.
I want to bring to
Formally
your kind,
or
Professor Harpreet, I want to bring to your kind notice, and I know that you have vast experience of all kind of universities. I mean, from basic universities, basic college level to IIT level. So the students who are graduating in India, they are some of the students are not that fortunate to have very good lab developed lab facilities, and also they always look forward to IIT system as something which is beyond their reach. And what the research work going on there, they cannot afford. They don't know anything, so they fear to even apply in systems like IIT, though they are capable. And as you said, they may be having passion also,
yeah.
which I see in them. But then they get confused that how to land up there. So what we should do, especially so that someday we work with people like Professor Harpreet. That was my actually question.
No, I think as I said, they should write to me because I should be knowing that a person needs my help, right?
Yes,
Otherwise, we are all for it actually. My
yes,
students are trained in some such a way that they handhold.
mm,
At least, of course, sometimes there's limitation on my part that accommodation, other things.
yeah,
If
yeah,
they can handle it, we welcome all interns, what we call internships, right?
yeah, yeah.
It may be formal, informal. We are actually always because what I believe is that uh, this facility, for example, in my lab, I might have spent more than 3 crore rupees. This is not my money. This is public
Yes,
money, which I
yeah,
bought from some agencies, right? So the equipment is theirs only.
mm-hmm,
But only limitation sometimes becomes is that sometimes the equipment is busy, so they have to wait for some time.
mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we are not trained to say no to anyone. Actually,
Yes, yes, yes.
we will help. The person has to wait for some time. That I can, that is my
Yeah.
limitation. Sometimes you can't reply in say
Mm,
a week or so,
mm,
but we are determined to help such people. Even on the other part, you said innovation and
mm,
incubation things. Even
mm.
IIT Rockford, we have a technology business incubator also in place. So we are always welcoming these students, not from IIT Rockford only, but from other institutions also. They can come and start their business.
Mm.
And in surface engineering, there is a lot of scope for such
Okay.
kind of
Mm,
incubations.
mm,
Right? Because ultimately you have to bring some setup and start. Maybe you can start with some small products, right? And start your own business, right?
mm, mm.
Or you can think about consultancy business, designing or analyzing or modeling these kind of surface engineering applications and stuff like that. So there is a lot of scope actually. We are ready to help such people. I know some colleges, rather most of the colleges are not so privileged to have these kind of facilities. We are sensitive to it, and we are ready to help actually.
Thanks a lot, Professor Harpreet, and believe me, it was a great interaction, and I got answers to majority, all of the questions, and
Sure.
I am very sure जो information आपकी तरफ से आया है सर, वो students को बहुत help करेगा, because it has come directly from you, and that much of detailed information we largely find, and that's the reason I consider myself fortunate also to interact with people like you and get so much information which I can spread further. Really, thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, Vijender ji. Thank you very much, Dr. Vijender. It's really, my, good luck that you have captured my feelings. Of course, it was the first time. I'm not sure how much I could answer you or in what way I answered. Maybe it may be confusing at times. But thank you very much for, connecting to me, and of course, bringing my group activities at this level. And I hope viewers will contact us whenever they need us, and we will definitely help to the extent possible.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you very much indeed.